A very warm welcome to this session, which is part of the JALT 2021. My name is John, and I am based here in Shanghai, China, coming to you live from a very wet Shanghai. I hope all is well with you guys there. In this session, we are going to be having a look at some practical solutions for online assessment for young adults. Although many of the ideas that I give you today will be good for any age group. All right. So obviously, education and the way that we've been teaching has changed drastically over the last year or so. And there are many challenges that we are facing, and maybe having to sort of change the way that we approach certain aspects of our teaching. For example, assessment and evaluation would be one of those. And how does that work, for example, online? Can we use the same principles, the same tools, or do we have to approach it a little bit differently? So we may have some questions about that. Our students may certainly have some questions about that. And in terms of online or remote teaching, a few of kind of the challenges here that we are probably all experiencing. Often informal assessment, this kind of ongoing informal assessment, which sort of makes up part of formative assessment, is often more difficult. We don't have that ability sometimes to be so spontaneous. We can't see and react to the student's sort of body language, whether they understand that activities, how well they're doing in certain activities in an online environment, where we might be able to pick up on those in a live face-to-face classroom environment. And as a result, I think we need to be more formalized with the way that we think about assessment, and having sort of clear plans for our assessment when we're teaching online. Just to distinguish quickly between sort of assessment and evaluation, in this session I'll be looking more on the assessment side, these kind of little sort of informative, sort of formative assessment ideas to help increase the quality of the learning by this sort of constant sort of feedback to students, as opposed to looking at kind of the overall judging the quality or evaluating the quality of what we're doing. Okay. But I think on both sides, particularly in the online context as well, those both still require some clear criteria to be able to assess and evaluate, and certainly sort of both sides are very sort of evidence driven as well. But as I mentioned, we're going to look more on this left sort of blue circle of the Venn diagram, and how we can do this more informative sort of ongoing assessment, keep it positive, keep feeding back to students, and keeping it also individualized as well, using maybe the data that we're getting from our online classes. So actually, we can think about today a bit like a paper aeroplane. So our aim today is we're looking for that perfect throw, right? When we make a paper aeroplane, sometimes when we throw it, it will glide beautifully a long way and fall maybe sort of 10, 12 meters away. Sometimes it will crash right at our feet without any flight. And I feel that's quite similar to, for example, online assessment. If we don't sort of plan our paper airplane, get it right, we can certainly come crashing down quite quickly. So we're going to have a look at the when we can assess students, little kind of these ongoing informative assessments, and how we can do that, and what kind of tools we can use. So let's think about when we can assess. So we can actually do that before class. We can do it when they're entering, during class, when they're exiting the class, and also after class. But the key here is to try and sort of link these stages. Often now, most publishers like Macmillan Education, who I'm working for, we will have our own online platforms for each course book, which come with like a online workbook or online practice. So you can actually sort of link up what they're doing before class using some activities from the online platform first. Teacher can check that, then come to class and apply that learning in class. And then after class, maybe they can go back and do some additional activities on the online platform. So it's all linked together. If you don't have that, there's still lots of ideas that I'll show you today about how we can try and link these elements together. And the more that we can link them together, the better. So for example, before class, a few ideas that we can do. So here we usually have topics at the start of each unit and some discussion questions. This example is about thought and thinking and right and left-brained people. So one great tool here is called AnswerGarden, and it's great for putting out a topic discussion question, maybe before class. So you would access the website AnswerGarden, you would type your question, create a QR code, and then send that to your students. They could then type in their answers, and that would automatically generate this kind of word cloud with all their ideas. All right, so that's before class. You could then come to class and then sort of link back to their ideas. So you could actually show the results at the start of the class. You could show the word cloud. Students could make summary sentences, maybe one by one orally. You could put them into breakout rooms to kind of summarize what they're seeing from the results. And if need be later, you could, after class, they could write a short summary about the data there. So again, we're kind of like linking up before, during, and after class. Likewise, when they're entering the class, surveys and polls are also a great way to generate some data for assessments. So again, some little agree or disagree and reasoning here. People who are right-brained and more creative, for example. So we would set up a little poll or survey using Google Forms, which is a brilliant way of setting up a little survey, maybe, or a poll. Again, we could write our question here, agree, disagree, and the reasons, and then send that live to the students. And then as they are filling out their answers, we can then show them, instantly show them the responses there, the data in class, okay? And again, we can link and then use that data for creating maybe summary sentences, or again, asking students to write a short summary about the data there. What else do we have? So in terms of assessment, so another good way for identifying how well they develop their ideas, maybe after a reading text. So for example, we could give them an anticipation guide worksheet. So we could send this through maybe Google Documents, for example. So we would write down certain statements related to the reading text. Often you might find these statements in the after reading activities. So they would agree and disagree with these statements before they read. They would then read, and then they would agree and disagree again based on what they read. And then they would write the reasons why they either keep the same opinion or maybe why they might have changed their opinion, okay? And it's a nice way to kind of grasp how well, or assess how well they have understood the information in the text, okay? So anticipation guide there for maybe assessing certain parts or certain reading skills, or how their ideas have changed over the course of a reading text. Also for listening during classes, we could extract the audio. So if you're using, for example, here with Skillful Second Edition, you can download the audio for these texts. You can even upload that audio to a Google Drive and create a link to that audio. You can then create a Google form quiz. So you have a quiz function with Google Forms. So you can insert the link to the audio and then create your quiz. And then during the class, you can send that link to the students, and they can listen in at their own pace, their own time, and fill out that quiz. And what's good with those quizzes is that you get kind of instant feedback as well, and you can see who's written what, who got what question right, etc., etc. And so you know maybe what to do some more work with. Again, a little informative, sort of ongoing way of figuring out how well they did with the listening. And then with those instant feedback answers, you can clearly pinpoint what challenges they had, and then you can maybe support them with that, again, to help improve the quality of their learning. Again, there's a nice little video link here about how to collect quiz answers and grade student responses with Google Forms. All right, and I'll put these links at the end of the presentation too. All right, so there was some reading assessment idea, listening comprehension idea there using the Google Form quizzes. Another idea for a little informative reading assessment would be a little 3-2-1 assessment. So when they're reading, they have to record 3 important ideas. They can even rank these in level of importance. Then 2 supporting details for each of those ideas, and then 1 question they have about each of the ideas. All right. And again, you can respond to those questions after they've done this activity, either directly after, or you can have time to maybe review them and then address those at the start of next class. All right. Again, if you're using like an online sort of Google document, Google survey or something like that, you can kind of see live results as they're typing, and then you are able to respond to those as they are writing and give immediate kind of feedback and see how well they've done, and then feedback on any gaps. Okay, again, nice link there to a 3-2-1 assessment, a little YouTube video. Again, as I mentioned, you might want to use a Google Doc there. Why? Because sometimes if you've got lots of pieces of paper being sent out to students, from different platforms and things, it can get a little bit messy. So if you're using one kind of platform, or maybe you're using Google Documents and Google Drive and Google Forms, you can keep everything in one place, and just much easier to manage over the course of your program. So you can create, for example, that 3-2-1 sheet on Google Document and then send the link to the students. It'll be much easier for you then to view and assess their understanding, instead of them sending you back individually Word documents or PDF files or something like that. There are also sort of shared spaces as well. So some of you may have your own sort of shared space that you use through your institution, or you may use other platforms like Padlet. So Padlet.com is, well, there's a variety of different ways you can use Padlet. There's a link there to 10 ways to use Padlet. But one way may be for exit tickets, to figure out how well they picked up the content of the lesson. But also help you maybe adjust your teaching, or what you maybe want to cover again at the start of next class. So, for example, we've got questions here. For example, what would you like me to review next class? What did you find most difficult from today's lesson? What questions do you have about today's lesson, etc., etc. Really useful data to assess how well they did, but also to adjust your teaching to help keep improving your students. And again, there's lots more ideas for Padlet there with a link, which I'll show you at the end. In terms of exiting the class, we mentioned Padlet there, but there are also different techniques or strategies, little exit tickets, for example. This one is called triangle, square, circle. So obviously a triangle has, you've got three sides. So they have to list down 3 important points that they learnt from today's lesson. The square, what's something that's squared or agreed with your thinking? Maybe that's really nice for like a reading text or a topic based lesson. And finally, a circle. So maybe what's one thing or question that's now circling around your head as a result of today's lesson. Again, that will give you a quick snapshot on how well they did. Again, I would suggest doing that on some kind of Google document or Google form, so you can keep that all in one place and analyze the responses more efficiently. One little tip, I mentioned listening and reading. In terms of submitting online writing, sometimes it takes a little bit of management, doesn't it, to submit writing, especially academic writing. Many platforms, so this one is taken from the Skillful second edition. So here they can actually submit their work, their writing through this online platform, which is great for the teachers. So you can go on and check who submitted their work and then export their work and mark it and send it back to the students. This also comes with maybe a clear checklist for students as well, maybe checklist and criteria for fulfilling the expectations of the assignment. But these kind of platforms just keep everything in one place and make life much easier for the teachers. Again, there was a link there to a little video about how to submit those writing tasks online. So talking about expectations, I'm going to leave you with a couple of extra tips in terms of assessment. And I think one of the key things here, as we mentioned at the start, was linking, right? Maybe what they do before class, what they do during class, and what they're doing after class. So linking that's one tip. The next one would be to think about the criteria. So when they're doing a listening, speaking, reading, or writing, or whatever kind of task, set them a clear criteria from which they can be assessed, and communicate that criteria with the students. Maybe can-do statements, like you can see here, are always a good way, with some kind of way or rubrics or scale for marking it. It may be a simple, yes, they can do it, or needs more work, and then action points about what they can do. It may be like a number scale. It may be, yes, they can do it to some extent, or not at all. Up to you what scale you use, but make sure you develop a criteria and communicate with students. And then you can obviously talk about that when you're assessing and giving feedback. I think it's much easier for them as well to see what gaps they have and then how they can fill those gaps. So again, there's a little idea for little rubrics here for a writing task, so sort of 3 areas that they will be assessed on for this assignment. Again, if you want, you can change these a little bit or make them into can-do statements. If you want, you can change the marking criteria from points to whatever kind of criteria or scale that you want. Okay, but these little teacher assessment sheets again come with this course, this Skillful second edition course. So we have obviously teacher assessments, but let's not also forget that we have other options such as peer assessments. Again, this is an example of a writing task, peer review, sort of checklist. So once a student has finished a writing task, they would submit it to a friend through maybe a shared platform that you're using at your institution, and your friend would have this checklist. So they would read your work and then go through the checklist and highlight any areas maybe you've missed, and then send back that feedback to you. and then you would rewrite your second draft using their peer review checklist. All right. Again, that will save you, the teacher, time as well at the end of the class. But also it's building up lots of sort of independent skills, making them more aware of assessment, particularly with self-assessment as well. And even after they've done their second draft and they're rewriting it, a little sort of checklist here for self-assessment. Again, we're teaching them good independent strategies for self-assessment here. Okay, so I hope that was useful in terms of revisiting assessment, maybe some of the challenges that we might have with online assessment, and then hopefully lots of little tips there for more kind of ongoing, informative, positive assessment with lots of feedback and sort of linking between different stages of a lesson. I would encourage you, if you enjoyed and like what you saw there, to maybe write down 3 important ideas that you learned today, maybe something that you agreed with from my training today. Maybe now you have one question now circling around your head. Have a think about those areas before you head off to the next session. If you want to get in touch with me with any ideas or questions that you now have as a result of this session, you can find my email there. And I wish you good luck with your online teaching, and particularly your online assessment. And hopefully you guys will be making incredible paper aeroplanes, which will be flying smoothly over a long distance, just like your online assessment. And just to finish, here are some of the links. I think you can click, they're hyperlinked to the website, so you can click on those and go through to the YouTube videos, for example, and tutorials about those activities that I showed you today. Good luck, all the best with your teaching, and look forward to seeing you online again for the next jout. Bye for now.